Hey percussionists, I've got a special app just for you guys. I'll tell the rest of the band about it some other time, but for you guys, I'm showing it to you right away here at your very first lesson. The app is called Tempo, and it's available for Apple iOS products. I believe it's also available for Android, and it should be free on most platforms. So check it out. It is a metronome. Now, a metronome is a device that gives you a constant, steady click that you can play along to, and it keeps you from speeding up or slowing down. In the old days, metronomes were mechanical, and I had one that went back and forth and back and forth back when I was taking piano lessons many, many years ago. But nowadays we have apps that do the exact same thing. And you'll notice that there's a play button right here, that triangle. If I press play, it gives me a nice steady click, and that's what we want to have. I can change the speed of it. We measure tempo, or the speed of things, on the number of beats per minute. So right now it's set at 120 BPM, or 120 beats per minute. Let's set it instead to 90. So I can go over here and I can click on that minus button, and there we go. If you hold it down, it moves by 10, or you can just go by tap it, tap it, tap it down to wherever you need it to be. Set it to 90, that sounds like this. So a slower beat, right? On each of these little dots here, there's 4 little symbols there. You can change the sound you get for each one. If you play around with it a little bit, you can make them disappear. If I click it again, it makes it a little bit different sound. So there's a lot of ways we can play around with this and get different sound effects. I'm sure you could go in and find out, there's a lot more details about what you can do. But the basic idea is get the Metronome app, set it to 90 beats per minute, and make sure you can get it to sound. This is the one that I often recommend because it's pretty easy to use, and a lot of people seem to like it. There are a ton of free metronome apps out there. There's actually one that I use that I like even a little bit better, but the last time I checked, it wasn't free. I think years ago when I bought it, I think I paid like 10 bucks for it, so I wouldn't spend 10 bucks for it. But this one's called Dr. Beat-Ot, and it's a lot more complicated. It's got a bit more power to it, but it's kind of confusing at first. I like it because I used to have an electronic metronome, like a special box that's just a metronome, and it was called a Dr. Beat. And this is basically the same thing, Dr. Beat-Ot, but has a little bit different of a sound, and it reminds me a lot of the old Dr. Beat I used to have years ago. So that's the one I tend to use a lot, but find some kind of a metronome app and learn how to use it. Hey, let's learn how to put your practice pad together today, okay? You're gonna have a practice pad that's gonna go on a stand, and to figure this out, I'll have to show you how to operate a drum stand and put it all together. Your stand probably is in 2 parts right now. There's the base, and then there's the cage is what we usually call it, the top part here. Let's start with the base part first. And it's the part that looks like this. Now yours might look different. In fact, yours might not even come apart into different parts, but this is what mine looks like, and yours might look similar. The most important thing to remember for any kind of a percussion stand or any bit of percussion equipment is how to operate these little screws, the thumb screws. If you turn clockwise, it gets tighter. If you turn counterclockwise, it gets looser. If you look just at the top part here, if I make the top part go to the right, it gets tighter. If I look at the top part and make the top part go to the left, it gets looser. So some people remember this by saying righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. If that works for you, cool. The tricky thing about this though is sometimes you'll be operating it from weird angles, and you need to think in your head, what would it look like if I was looking at it straight on? So think about what it would look like straight on, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So if it's down this way and you're looking up at it, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. If you're looking down at it, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Wherever direction you're facing, that's the way it has to go. So to do this, we're going to loosen up the bottom part first. Which way do we go for loose? We're going to go to the left. So think of the top part here going to the left, lefty-loosey. And there's 3 legs, it's a tripod, and I can pull them out just like this. And I want to set it up so they're nice and wide, just about there like that. If it's too narrow, you'll find it's very unstable and it could easily tip over. Too wide really isn't a thing. Sometimes it gets a little bit goofy if you go really wide like that, depending on how your stand works. But something like this is probably going to be the most stable. I want to tighten that up, so righty-tighty. Just like that. The base is now all set to go. Grab the top part of your stand. So it's bent in half right now, and I need to bring this up. But this thumb screw is tightened. I gotta loosen it, right? So I need to go lefty-loosey. Remember, if you look straight at it, lefty-loosey. Part's in the way here. Ah! There we go. Lefty-loosey, and now it can move. So I'm gonna orient this so that it's one long piece. Now, this part may look very different on yours. This is probably the part that looks the most different between different brands of stands. This is what mine looks like. Yours might be completely different, but it probably has something that you tighten that changes the angle of the top part. The top part has, this one has 3 legs on it, and I'm gonna open them up just like that. By the way, if you ever have a hard time opening a tripod, whether it's the base or the top part here, it might be because you're only pulling on one part of it. You'll notice if I pull on just one of this, it doesn't work. I really have to pull on at least 2 of them to make it work, okay? So if you can't get it to move with just one, try 2. Some really old stands that have been kind of bent up, you know, if they're like 40-year-old stand that's gotten a little bit bent, sometimes you actually have to get all 3 moving, so you have to kind of find a way to move all 3 legs at the same time. This doesn't need to go down very far, but yours might go down all the way. That's fine. There's probably some kind of a tightening mechanism back here to stop this from going too far. So for now, you can just leave it all the way out like that and just realize there's something down here that will tighten that up. And just like everything else, it is kind of a thumb screw. In this case, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, yeah. If I want it to go that way, I would righty-tighty. If I want it to go the other way, lefty-loosey. That might be a little confusing at first. So just try both ways and figure out which way it needs to go. But I want to keep it nice and open for now. Next up, I'm going to place the top of the stand in the bottom of the stand. I'm doing this up in the air so you can see it on camera. Don't do it in the air. Set this on the ground and then put it together. But so that you can see it, I'll hold it up in the air. I'll place this just like that, slide that in there, and then I'm going to tighten this righty-tighty. We're almost ready to put the top on. I'll raise it up just high enough so you can see it on camera here. I'm going to grab my practice pad. Now this practice pad is a dual-sided pad. It's got one side here that's kind of rubbery and not quite as loud, and it's got a louder side in the back that has a little less bounce. Yours might be a single-sided pad. In fact, it probably is a single-sided pad. The double-sided pads are a little less common. So it probably looks more like this, okay? There may be a label on it, and typically when we put a head on a drum or a pad on a stand, we'll put the label towards us. So I'm going to place this towards me. I'll lay the pad right on top just like this. And then I need to tighten these parts of the basket of the cage up like that, okay? So in this case, on this particular stand, that means that I need to tighten this mechanism right there. I will tighten this until those top legs of the basket have gripped the pad. Now, a drum is usually going to be wider in diameter than this. And so if this was an actual drum, I wouldn't have to tighten this nearly as much. You'll notice too that there's these little rubber protective parts in the end of the little arms here. So you might have to kind of, if the pad kind of gets jammed in there and stuck, you might have to kind of adjust it a little bit until it's where you need it to be. If you have a drum instead of a pad, that's totally fine. You'll do it basically the same way. You probably have a snare drum where there's a head on top, a head on the bottom, and then on that bottom head, there's these little metal snares. So those snares go down, okay? Be careful too, because the bottom head on a snare drum is very, very thin, very delicate. If you were to put that and not look at what you're doing, you could easily puncture that bottom head on one of these arms here. So I'm getting pretty close here, getting this tightened all the way. And at this point, it's done, except it's kind of at a weird angle, and that's because this part right here is not quite straight up and down. So I'll need to loosen that, adjust this until I'm nice and level. And there we have it. You've now assembled your pad. Now you also have a mallet instrument, a xylophone, possibly a bells set, and we'll talk about using those at our next lesson. I'm excited to get into that part too. As you can see behind me, I've got a marimba and a vibraphone that I'll be using in these lessons. But for now, we're going to stick with just one instrument for today. That instrument is going to be the snare drum, or in the drum pad will take the place of an actual snare drum. It's a lot nicer to practice on a drum pad, especially if you're indoors, not quite so hard on the ears. You'll need a pair of sticks, of course, and so the sticks you need are concert snare sticks. There are different sizes and styles of snare drum sticks, and the kind you might use in a drum set are going to be very different than the kind you'd use on a concert snare. A concert snare is the kind we have here. It's on a stand. You stand up when you play it, and it's the kind of snare you would find in a concert band or in an orchestra. And the sticks that we use for a concert snare are going to be a little bit thicker than those you'd find on, say, a drum set. The right tool for the right job. To hold the stick, let's talk about the grip we're going to use. You can take your thumb and first finger and make a T. The T stands for Mr. T. Well, maybe it stands for turkey. I don't know. But make that T, and you're going to grip the stick with that T. So the thumb is across from the first finger, the index finger. And then you wrap the other fingers around, and that is the grip we use. Let's check some things on this grip. For starters, if you look at your palm, you'll see that it's basically a square, right? The stick is going to go diagonally across your palm from here to there, from one corner to the other. Then you can wrap, again, the thumb around the stick, first finger across from the thumb, the back three fingers wrap around, and that stick is still basically diagonal across the palm. You can check that each day when you pick up the sticks. Make sure it's in the right spot. Another point here, we need to make sure that the thumb is flat against the stick and it's pointed down towards the end of the stick. The flat of your thumb is against the stick, not the tip of your thumb. And if you hold it like this, it's going to cause a lot of problems later. So make sure it's not the tip of your thumb that's against the stick, but the flat of the thumb. And really, if you simply take off the other fingers from the stick and hold the stick, you'll probably hold it just like this. That's going to give you the most control, getting that T around the stick. Okay? Thumb, first finger, thumb points right down the stick. To hold it like this, you have to make sure the thumb is right across from the first finger. Right? If the thumb is way too far over like this, it'll fall out of your hand. So we want to make sure that the thumb is right across from the first finger. Likewise, you can't have that thumb too far back because once again, it's going to fall out of your hand. So you want to make sure that the thumb and the first finger are right across from each other. Where this gets tricky is that when you put the other three fingers around, your thumb could conceivably get to the wrong spot and you might not notice it with the stick falling out of your hand because the other fingers are compensating. But it's going to cause problems in your playing. You really want to have that thumb right across from the first finger at all times, just like this. If you have a pair of Vic Firth SD1 General sticks, you might find that there is an American flag on that pair of sticks. They've printed them in different ways. This was a 50th anniversary Vic Firth special pair of sticks, and it has kind of an old-fashioned writing on the side. It does not have the little American flag, though. But the American flag is helpful if you have it, because you can adjust the position of the stick until that American flag is right underneath your thumb. That's an easy way to find out a good spot to have the stick in your hand. If you don't have a pair of sticks with that little American flag, like the standard Vic Firth SD1 General, you can instead just look at the amount of stick that's poking out past the edge of your hand here. It should be about that much stick should be out visible past your hand. If you can't see any of the stick, you probably need to choke up a little bit more. That's not very common. Most people wouldn't accidentally do this. However, it is quite common for beginners to choke up way too far. So just like swinging a softball bat or a baseball bat, you don't want to choke up too far. It really limits your ability to get a good swing. So about that much stick sticking out the back would be just fine. When we play a drum, our top of the hand is generally going to be flat. We call this the American grip or the German grip. The French grip is very different. The French grip, the thumb is pointing straight up and down. We don't want to use the French grip for snare drum. We're going to use the American grip or the German grip. Technically, there is a difference. German grip, the hand is completely flat on top. The American grip is turned over sideways a little bit. So from straight on, this is the French grip. No, 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 no. German grip is great. American grip is turned slightly. So German, American, that's just fine. French, no, no, no. We do actually use the French grip in certain situations, but we'll talk about that like when you're in college. For now, for just about everything else, we're going to use basically the American grip where it's back of the hand is pretty much flat. Okay. When you bring your sticks into position on the drum pad, they should be coming in at a slight angle. You'll notice that if you look at my hand here, as my arm comes out, the stick comes in like this because, again, that stick goes diagonally across my palm. I don't want to have it straight down towards my wrist here, but neither do I want it way out to the side like that. It's got to be right there in the corner. I will say this, though. If you're going to make a mistake one way or the other, it'd be better to have the stick closer to your wrist than way out to the side. The reason for that is the kind of wrist motion we use. We use this kind of wrist motion when we play drums. We could call this an extension flexion motion. As we flex and extend, it is not a rotational motion. So we're not doing this like opening a doorknob. We're not doing this when we play drums. We're doing this. Think about how you'd maybe wave bye-bye to somebody. Maybe you'd pat a dog in the head. However you want to think about this, this is what we do, not opening the doorknob, okay? So it's got to be this motion. And that's why this is so important. This needs to stay nice and tight close to the wrist here, because if it comes out too far, then it's not going to work right, because as I use that same up and down motion, the stick does weird things. I would start to rotate accidentally if I have my stick out too far. So it's super important that you keep your stick right there in the corner. And if anything, it can be a little bit farther in. Just make sure you don't go so far in that your pinkies can't touch the end of the stick. All of these back three fingers must be in the stick at all times. So don't let it go so far you can't get your pinky in the stick. Okay. I think for beginners, I usually tell them, yeah, keep it almost in your wrist, but just far enough out that you can get your pinky on it, no farther. So I have my sticks in each hand. I want to make sure that I have the same grip in both, diagonally across the palm. Use that T, right? Grip it with the T, back three fingers on the sticks, and then there's a slight angle because of the angle across the palm, and this is what it looks like if my sticks were up in the air. But we're going to have the sticks down in position. I'm going to reposition my setup here and put the drum pad in position so we can do some playing together. Okay, I've repositioned my setup, so I've got my drum pad right here in front of me, and it's about at waist height. So this is a good height for me. If it's a little bit higher, a little bit lower, that's fine, but about waist height is where you want it to be. And we want to have it about maybe 1 fist's distance away from my body. I got my sticks, and when I bring them down into position here, the sticks should be basically at the center of the drum pad or the center of the drum head, or equidistant from the center. They can't both be exactly on the center, so they're going to be basically about the same distance from the center, as close as I can get to that. In the down position, where my stick is going to hit the pad or the head, the stick should basically be parallel to the ground. I don't want to have an angle where I'm playing down into the head or up like this. I want that down position to be basically parallel to the ground. That's going to give me the best sound on a drum. On a pad, it doesn't really make a difference, the sound, whether you're up here or down here, but on a real drum, it'll sound best if my sticks are level. The angle between my sticks is about 90 degrees. So if you know from math class, 90 degrees is a right angle, right? So they're both going to be 90 degrees from each other. And don't forget everything we just talked about for the grip. For now, you can go ahead and take one stick, set it down. You won't need it quite yet. We're just going to need one stick. But before we do that, I need something else. I need a tennis ball. All right, I've got a tennis ball. The reason I'm going to use a tennis ball is because I want you to watch the bounce of this ball off of this head. Check it out. Right? Bounces right up. And I'm not making that tennis ball move. I'm basically just dropping it and it bounces on its own. So that same kind of motion is what we're going to do with our stick. I'm going to bounce it off the head and come right back up again. Okay, so let's start with just one hand. I'm going to use my right hand because I'm right-handed. If you want to use your dominant hand, if it's your right hand, if you're right-handed, left-handed, if you're left-handed, either way. But I'm going to have my stick in position like this, and I'm going to rotate it up like that, and then I'm going to bounce it right off the head, just like that. You'll notice I'm not moving it slowly. It goes relatively quickly. Down, up, down, up, down, up every time, down, up. Now, as you're doing this, watch for some things. When it goes down, the back of the hand should basically be flat, right? We don't want to turn it over into the French grip. No, no, no. It's got to be the German or the American grip, just like that. For now, keep all your fingers on the stick and keep that stick pressed against your palm. At our next lesson, I'll show you how to loosen this up and relax it a little bit. For now, we're getting a good workout in our wrist. This is all going to be wrist motion only. If I turn to the side, you can see that I'm only using the wrist. Watch my arm this time. Check and see if it moves. It doesn't, does it? The arm does not pump up and down. I'm not using these big stupid muscles up here. I'm using the wrist muscles because those are going to be much finer control than the big shoulder and elbow muscles. So no arm pumping. It's all about that wrist stroke. From straight on, if you see where the stick is coming in like this, it should go straight down and straight up again. Watch. It doesn't slice in or slice out. It doesn't stir around. It doesn't go in kind of a crazy figure eight. It just goes down, up. This is harder than it looks. So what I did years ago was I would get a mirror set up at an angle to my stick so I could more precisely see, am I going straight up and straight down, or am I slicing? Am I going around in a circle? So being able to see that is kind of an important aspect of developing a really good stroke. But for now, think about down, up, making it nice and smooth. You can watch the stick as well and see if it's moving up and down. You can even take your opposite stick, set it right next to that first stick, and see if it's going straight up and straight down. Once you have a pretty good handle on that, switch to your other stick, to what I call the stupid hand. Oh yeah, so the hand that's your non-dominant hand. So if you're right-handed, your right hand's the good hand, your left hand's the bad hand. Try it with a left hand or whatever your non-dominant hand is. And you're gonna find it's probably gonna be quite a bit more challenging. So same thing, get into position, have the stick in the right spot, rotate up, and think down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Same motion, nice and smooth, down and up, bounce right off the head, down, up. Double check to make sure the back of the hand is on the stick and then the stick is nice and pulled into the palm. I mean, don't give it the death grip, you know, but keep it in position. Make sure there's a little bit of stick showing from the back right there. Have that stick close to the wrist, but not so far in that you can't get your pinky on there. Make sure the pinky's on the stick. Have it just far enough out that you can get that pinky on the stick. Don't go way out to the side though. If you do, this motion's not going to work. So keep that stick closer to the wrist. Down, up, down, up. Once you're starting to feel pretty comfortable with that, you can try doing an exercise that we call 8 on a hand. I didn't name this exercise. It's been around for like decades, but you play 8 notes on each hand. That's why they call it 8 on a hand. So it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Your goal is to make sure that all 8 of those notes on one hand sound identical. And the 8 notes on the other hand also sound identical to each other and to the first hand. It should almost be like 16 notes played on a loop on a computer. They should all sound exactly alike. Once you get a feel for that, we can then take the Metronome app and try it with that. I have it set at 90 beats a minute, same as what I talked about just a minute ago. And I'm going to play 8 in a hand. I'm going to do 2 of these strokes for every 1 beat, okay? So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Does that make sense? I'm going to bring my stick heights down just a little bit though. 1, 2, here I go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How'd you do? Join me if you didn't already. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, that speed right there is fast enough that it may take you a little bit of time to work up to that tempo. If you want, you could slow it down to just 1 note per beat. It would look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get the idea. So that actually might be a better way to do it at the start. Or you could simply change the tempo, the beats per minute, on the Tempo app and the Metronome app and try it at different speeds. Your goal for next time is to develop a lot of skill at being very smooth as you make each of these strokes. Notice a couple things as I'm doing this. For starters, notice that I started in the up position. I didn't start down, I started up. And each stroke went down, up. I finished in the up position as well. 7, 8, and then the next one came in. As I played, I didn't stop in between each hand. I didn't go 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3. I went right from one to the next. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2. I tried to play the same height with both hands. This would be incorrect. 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you see how my left hand was much lower? Chances are your non-dominant hand is going to play lower at the start compared to your dominant hand. So if you're up here with your right hand, your left hand might be down there. You can even hear the difference there too. And as percussionists, we want to make sure we have the same sound, the same amount of control in both hands. I mentioned before about being right-handed, left-handed. Ideally, percussionists develop so much skill, so much facility in their offhand that it becomes just as strong, just as skilled as their primary hand, and they become ambidextrous. So, for next time, work on single strokes, 1 at a time, okay? Then work on 8 on a hand. And I just did 8 on one hand, 8 on the next. Take it to the next level. Keep it going. 8, 8, 8, 8, and see how many times you can get it going until it falls apart. I gotta warn you about something. Your temptation is gonna be to try a whole bunch of stuff because, hey, you got a pad, you got sticks. Oh, hold on. Remember the Texas method. That Texas method we talked about in the class video, used by so many of these amazing Texas schools that have outstanding percussion programs as well as band programs. Their goal is to focus on one thing. And you have a lot to think about right now, perfecting this grip and making sure it moves smoothly. That by itself is like a lifetime of work. So don't go and try to play a bunch of other instruments. Don't play a bunch of extra notes because it's going to lead to poor form and poor technique. Imagine that I was the coach of a hockey team and I had a team of players that were brand new to hockey. They had never played before. They'd never even been on the ice before. What should I do at that first practice? Should I get them all suited up in equipment and send them out on the ice and tell them to play hockey? Or should I maybe teach them how to skate first? Yeah, I should teach them how to skate first. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. I'm teaching you how to skate. Now, the danger is those hockey players, when they go home, if they then go dive into their hockey bags, put all the equipment on, go out into their local rink and start skating around trying to play hockey, they're going to be thinking about their hockey stick, they're going to think about scoring a goal, and their skating form is going to be terrible. They're going to be building bad habits into their skating because they're not thinking about that, they're thinking about scoring a goal. And that's not what they should be working on. At the next hockey practice, oh man, they're going to have a hard time skating with good form and good technique because they'll have had deeply ingrained bad habits into their brain. So let's develop some good habits, focus on single notes, focus on 8 in a hand, and constantly be watching and listening and thinking about what you sound like. One of the cool things about percussion is we can see exactly what's happening. And so it becomes really easy for us to diagnose problems. If you're stirring, if you're slicing, if you're kind of choppy, if your stick is in the wrong spot, if your hand is turned over, if your thumb's not on the stick, if your thumb and first finger aren't across from each other in the T, if your back fingers are coming off the stick, if you're choked up too far, there's like a million ways that this can go wrong, and we can see it at a glance. So watch yourself. Be awesome. And I'll look forward to seeing you at our next lesson, and I'll teach you some more stuff then. Until next time, go practice.